Back when I was 18, I lived with my dad in a somewhat secluded area on the outskirts of Montana. Our home sat on 5 acres of land, surrounded by nature, and several relatives also called this sprawling property home. Picture this: a long driveway that branched off into separate mud and gravel driveways leading to each house. It was the kind of place where the night sky was crystal clear, and the only sounds were the chirping crickets and rustling leaves. On an ordinary weeknight, after finishing my homework, I'd settle down to decide whether to immerse myself in the tunes of my stereo or indulge in some spine-chilling paranormal shows. Little did I know that one fateful night, at around 9 p.m., the tranquility of our remote haven would be shattered. I was in the process of winding down for the night when, out of nowhere, a mysterious tapping sound echoed on my bedroom window. Now, my bedroom was perched on the 2nd floor, and there were no towering trees nearby for someone to climb up. With most of my family away that night, the eerie feeling settled in. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, I glanced out but was obstructed by a large TV stand. Downstairs, I scoured the kitchen and living room, but there was no sign of anyone. My dad often worked late nights, and that night, I found myself alone in the echoing silence. Thoughts of my dad forgetting his keys crossed my mind as I cautiously made my way towards the front door. Unable to see his car in the driveway from my vantage point, I squinted through the darkness. The absence of his familiar vehicle sparked a tingling unease. Adjacent to the living room was a sliding glass door that led to the back porch. Long blinds concealed the view, but the porch light illuminated a chilling silhouette. Panic gripped me. It wasn't my father. A knot tightened in my stomach as I realized that whoever stood outside my door was an uninvited guest. I rushed to ensure the front door was locked, my hands trembling as I stuck them through the blinds, hesitant to look outside. A quick survey of the kitchen led me to a decision. Armed with a substantial knife, I bolted back upstairs into my bedroom. As I turned off the lights and settled in, a loud bang resonated from outside my window, sending shivers down my spine. Fear engulfed me, and I sought refuge in my closet. With my back against the wall and the knife clutched tightly, I dialed my dad, narrating the terrifying ordeal. He confirmed he wasn't expected home and reassured me he was on his way. While on the call, I summoned the courage to contact the police. The dispatcher informed me that the nearest unit was approximately 25 minutes away. Alone, armed, and frightened, I waited in the closet as the banging noises persisted, seemingly from every direction, like an ominous symphony. My dad and the police arrived simultaneously, but by then, the intruders had vanished. A swift search revealed multiple sets of footprints in the mud surrounding the house. The officers took my statement, yet the mystery remained unsolved. To this day, I grapple with the chilling memory, the silhouette on the back porch, the unexplained presence, and the unsettling realization that multiple people had invaded our isolated sanctuary. The incident, with its unanswered questions, lingers, leaving me haunted by the uncertainty of their motives. During the spring of 2015, I found myself adjusting to a new life far from the safety of my Indiana hometown. I had relocated for college to a city in another state, and the contrast in atmosphere was stark. Living in an apartment with 4 other women, our place was perched above a house, accessible only through a long alleyway and up a set of stairs, making it feel somewhat secluded. One day, as I hurriedly stopped by the apartment to grab some music before a choir practice, I failed to follow the cautious habits ingrained in me by my safe upbringing. I didn't bother locking the door, assuming I'd be back within a few minutes. Little did I know that this momentary lapse in judgment would lead to one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. As I gathered my materials on the kitchen table, a knock on the screen door interrupted my thoughts. Glancing up, I noticed a young Hispanic man standing on the doorstep. He seemed unassuming, of medium height, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans. Assuming he might be a delivery person, I called out a casual greeting. However, to my surprise, the man didn't respond with words. Instead, he reached down and casually opened the screen door, advancing toward me. Initially, I wasn't alarmed. I began to speak, assuming he was there for a legitimate reason, perhaps delivering a package. It was only when I noticed the absence of any parcel in his hands that a wave of unease washed over me. What he did have, however, was a box cutter, and before I could fully grasp the danger, he pressed the blade against my neck. Fear paralyzed me momentarily as he instructed me to get up and walk into my roommate's bedroom, adjacent to the kitchen. He locked the door behind us, and as he pushed me onto the bed, my mind raced, attempting to rationalize the situation. Perhaps he just wants to rob me, I thought. I convinced myself to comply and let him take whatever he wanted. As I sat on the bed, he started searching the room. His focus shifted to some telephone cables near the bed, and he began clumsily attempting to tie my wrists together. It wasn't going well, but he persisted. It was only when I snapped out of my initial shock that I realized the situation could escalate if he managed to bind me. The fight-or-flight instinct kicked in, and I screamed, thrashed, and resisted. In the chaos that ensued, I made a desperate break for the door. He caught me, attempting once again to tie my hands, but my thrashing and screams became too much for him to handle. In a sudden decision, he abandoned his efforts and fled the apartment. I followed, screaming for help. A neighbor, living in the house beneath ours, swiftly responded. He saw the assailant running down the alley and chased him into the street. We called the police, and they arrived promptly. I later collaborated with a police sketch artist to create a composite image, which was broadcast on television. Remarkably, the authorities apprehended the perpetrator within a week. During the investigation, a chilling revelation emerged. The police officer on the case disclosed that a local gang required new members to carry out horrific acts against women as part of their initiation. In this case, the assailant's intent was to sever the victim's nipples and present them as an offering to the gang. Since that harrowing experience, I've become an advocate for personal safety, always emphasizing the importance of locking doors, even if it's just for a few minutes. The incident left an indelible mark on my psyche, but the swift response of the police and the support of my community played a crucial role in my recovery. Sharing my story is a way of raising awareness about the importance of vigilance and personal safety in unexpected circumstances. In the autumn of 2010, I was residing in a bustling suburb just beyond the outskirts of Denver, Colorado. Nestled in a townhome that offered both comfort and proximity to my workplace in the heart of the city, life appeared relatively routine until a singular night unfolded, etching an indelible mark on my memory. As a salaried employee whose work hours fluctuated depending on the unpredictable whims of Wall Street, my return home could range from the early afternoon to the eerie silence of the early morning hours. It was on one such night, free from the constraints of a traditional schedule, that the inexplicable occurred. The evening commenced innocuously. Having spent quality time with my parents and sharing a leisurely dinner, I eventually arrived back at my townhome around 9 p.m. The facade of normalcy, however, was shattered the moment I stepped inside. The entrance, adorned with a staircase leading to the upper floor, was marked by an unusual darkness, the light switch failing to respond. An assumption of a mere burnt-out bulb quickly dissipated when a low, ominous hissing sound reached my ears. An eerie stillness enveloped the air as I looked up, expecting to confront a malfunctioning electrical fixture. The sight that met my gaze defied reason and sent a shiver down my spine. Bathed in the muted glow of a nearby lamppost, the upstairs window revealed the door to my master bedroom slightly ajar. Yet, it wasn't the door that chilled me to the bone, it was the presence on the ceiling just above the threshold. Attempting to discern details from my vantage point, I struggled to comprehend the surreal tableau before me. A dark figure, contorted in a quadruped position, appeared as if defying gravity, with long strands of hair cascading from its head. The surreal scene was enough to elicit an involuntary yelp from my lips. In response to my audible distress, the figure emitted a guttural shriek, its unsettling presence disappearing from view. I could hear a series of thudding noises, followed by the unmistakable sound of a window shattering. Fear seizing me, I fled the premises, retreating to the refuge of my car. It was there, with trembling hands, that I dialed the police, recounting the inexplicable events that had just transpired. After what felt like an interminable wait punctuated by anxious breaths, a police cruiser pulled into my driveway. Armed officers cautiously entered my townhouse, exploring its confines with guns drawn. To my bewilderment, their search yielded no evidence of the unearthly encounter, save for a shattered window in the hallway. Though I provided a detailed statement and filed a report, the incident remained cloaked in mystery. 2 weeks later, haunted by the lingering uncertainty of that night, I made the decision to abandon my townhome for a less eerie apartment closer to work. In the years that followed, I delved into online communities where others shared their encounters with cryptids and the supernatural. Yet, amidst the myriad tales, I clung to the realization that I might never fathom the nature of what transpired on that fateful night. Today, as I share my story, I acknowledge the enigma that remains, embracing the understanding that some mysteries are destined to elude explanation. At the ripe age of 18, just as the sweet freedom of high school graduation embraced me, my family decided it was time for a fresh start. We packed our bags and set our sights on a picturesque town in Oregon, leaving behind the familiar streets of our hometown. My mother claimed it was an opportunity for a clean slate, but beneath the surface, I sensed it was an escape from the notoriety my sister, Adrienne, had stirred up in our old neighborhood. Adrienne, being the spirited and rebellious soul she was, vanished shortly after we settled into our charming new abode nestled between emerald forests and rolling hills. A call from her parole officer revealed she had eloped to Seattle, unwilling to embrace the change in scenery. My mother, burdened by the predicament, had to rush back to Georgia to deal with the situation, leaving me alone in our new, unfamiliar home. On one fateful morning, as the Oregon sun cast its golden glow across the landscape, I decided to acquaint myself with the neighborhood. My jog through the serene streets took an eerie turn when, amidst the rustling leaves and distant chirping birds, a chilling sensation crawled up my spine. I paused to catch my breath and change playlists, feeling the unmistakable gaze of someone nearby. Despite my surroundings appearing ordinary, an inexplicable sense of being watched lingered. Cutting my walk short, I hurried home. Locking the doors, I ascended the stairs for a quick shower. Amidst the calming cascade of water, I heard faint thuds from downstairs. Heart racing, I turned off the shower, listened intently, and heard another thud. Clad in a towel, I raced downstairs to confront an invisible intruder, only to find an empty, secure house. Confusion settled, but an unsettling feeling lingered, refusing to dissipate. To ease my mother's concerns, I assured her of my well-being during our phone call later that day. Opting for takeout and relaxation, I immersed myself in a Netflix marathon, the events of the day fading into the background. Little did I know, the night held an unexpected twist. Around 10 p.m., after devouring dinner and falling into a couch-induced slumber, I jolted awake. The room was frigid, the thermostat displaying an ominous 42 degrees. A palpable sense of danger hung in the air, and I discovered my phone missing. Fumbling on my laptop, I turned to a website called TextNow, desperately attempting to locate my device. As the ringtone abruptly ceased, heavy breathing echoed through the laptop speakers. Panic set in, intensifying as knocks resonated from the patio doors. Gripping an improvised weapon, I cautiously approached, only to be met with the chilling sight of a figure wearing a grotesque fox mask. Before I could react, the intruder slid the patio door open with unnerving speed. Terrified, I bolted out of the front door, finding refuge in the neighboring house across the street. The police, summoned by the elderly woman who answered my frantic knocking, arrived swiftly. A thorough search of my house yielded no trace of the intruder, leaving me bewildered and apprehensive. Seeking solace, I accompanied the officers to the station, desperate for answers. The retrieval of my phone outside the house proved futile, as it bore no fingerprints. Frustration and fear gnawed at me, but the true horror awaited when I unlocked my phone to call my mother. My photo gallery contained 15 videos, each capturing me in a vulnerable slumber on the couch, each lasting nearly 3 minutes. The masked intruder had not only invaded my home but had silently observed me as I slept. The violation I felt was profound, inducing nausea and a desperate need to flee. Hours later, my mother and Adrian arrived, whisking me away from the house that was meant to be our haven in Oregon. The violation and vulnerability linger, haunting my thoughts, a stark reminder that safety is never guaranteed, even in the tranquil embrace of a seemingly idyllic town. In the mid-2005s, when I was just a 5-year-old, my family hired a babysitter named Linda. She had been a high school friend of my mom's, and at first, everything seemed normal. Linda was tall, skinny, with dark blonde hair always tied up neatly. She even lived with us for a while, becoming an integral part of our family. As time went on, Linda's behavior took a dark turn. The once patient and kind babysitter became increasingly impatient, rude, and shockingly abusive, particularly towards my 2 sisters, ages 4 and 7 at the time. My older sister once confided that she believed Linda had tried to harm her intentionally. According to her, Linda grabbed a bottle with a mysterious green liquid and attempted to force her to drink it, leaving a traumatic memory she couldn't fully articulate. Linda's abuse escalated, targeting us for the most trivial reasons like accidentally knocking something over or spilling a drink. What was even more disturbing was that she saved these violent outbursts for when our parents were away, completely unaware of the turmoil happening under their own roof. The breaking point, surprisingly, came when our family cat turned against Linda. One day, Linda accidentally closed the door on my little sister's hand, causing her immense pain. Our usually gentle cat sprang into action, attacking Linda with a ferocity we had never witnessed. Claws out, hissing, and biting, our feline friend defended us against this newfound threat. It was during this episode that our parents started suspecting Linda's instability, though they remained unaware of the extent of her abusive behavior. Despite these warning signs, Linda continued to babysit us, and it was during one haunting night that the memories become a bit hazy, as if my mind is trying to protect me from recalling something too painful. One vivid recollection remains etched in my mind, even after 18 years. It was late at night, and my little sister couldn't sleep. She climbed up to my bunk bed, and we began talking quietly. In a moment of innocent playfulness, she attempted to hang off the edge of the top bunk, but she lost her grip and fell, screaming and crying. Linda stormed into the room, her patience long gone, yelling, cursing, and wielding my dad's belt. My sister was subjected to a barrage of spankings, and Linda threw her onto the bottom bunk, commanding her to go back to sleep. As Linda left, slamming the door behind her, I stood there frozen in shock, unable to comprehend the cruelty I had just witnessed. Linda's anger was not reserved for my sisters alone. There was one instance when I was physically struck. I remember defiantly calling her a name, and she retaliated with a slap across my face. I can't recall the exact details leading up to it, but it was likely triggered by her usual unreasonable yelling. Finally, the nightmare came to an end when Linda disappeared from our lives for good. It was then that my sisters and I revealed the extent of Linda's abuse to our parents. Linda had struck us several times, yelled incessantly, and created an environment of fear. My parents, with their memories not serving them well, were undoubtedly distressed at the revelation. Regrettably, our family never contacted the authorities. There was no tangible proof of the abuse, everything rested on our words, making it a challenging case to pursue legally. It's perplexing why my sisters and I didn't speak up earlier, perhaps due to threats made by Linda or the fog of childhood memories. Years later, we learned that Linda had faced legal consequences, serving time in jail. The exact reasons behind her arrest remained unknown, leaving us with lingering questions about the justice that was served. The scars from that period still affect us, and occasionally, we discuss these events, reflecting on the lasting impact Linda had on our lives. I can't help but wish for justice to prevail, hoping that Linda faces the consequences of her actions. The story of my abusive babysitter, Linda, is one that I will carry with me for the rest of my life.